If you've been paying attention over the past week, especially if you've checked in on any of your investment accounts, well, you'll know that things have been changing and changing quickly. And amidst an election, well, now both frontrunners have made promises to change Canadians' investment accounts. Now, this is something that you should know about that could seriously impact your retirement, whether you're currently in it or if you're planning decades into the future. And there have been some serious complaints made, complaints that I personally have a problem with, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, I haven't really heard people saying this enough because it seems like in every situation, the same people are winning and the same people are losing. But first, let's get into what's happening, what these changes are, and how it's going to affect you, your money, and everything else moving forwards. Markets have been going down over the past month and especially over the past 5 days. And regardless of what you think about tariffs as a strategy over the long term, it's certainly true that the uncertainty of tariffs in the short term is what's causing a lot of market change. Now, whether or not this will continue moving forward, nobody knows, but a lot of people are extremely mad about this, especially those who are close to making a big purchase like a home, or perhaps they're close to retirement. These people are furious because the investments that they needed, well, those investments have decreased in value significantly. Now, as frustrating as that situation is, I think that it was entirely avoidable in most cases. And in a minute, I'll talk to you about how you can prevent yourself from making mistakes like this. But avoidable or not, the leaders in Canada are proposing big changes to try to help people who are in this situation, help them out of it. And the biggest change is coming to the RRSP, which is one of the most popular and most important tax-advantaged investment accounts that Canadians have access to. Now, a basic refresher, the idea of an RRSP is that you can contribute to it each year, and the amount that you contribute to it, you're not taxed on. Whatever income you earn and put in the RRSP, don't have to pay taxes on it. The idea is that you will invest inside of this account tax-free, and then you'll only be taxed on the withdrawals from this RRSP account. The idea being that you're making more money at one point earlier in your life when you're contributing, and you're making less in the future, perhaps when you retire, so you can withdraw at a lower tax rate. That's the basic idea of an RRSP. What you might not know is that there's a sister account to the RRSP. It's called the Registered Retirement Income Fund, and eventually your RRSP will convert into a Registered Retirement Income Fund, and it has to be changed to an RRIF by age 71. Now, I'm oversimplifying a little bit here, but with a RRIF, that basically says, okay, everything that you've contributed to your RRSP, now you're going to have to start in a mandatory way taking out that money and getting it taxed as income, but you can use this to support your retirement. Now, based on the age that you convert your RRSP to a RRIF, you'll have to make certain minimum payouts. So you can't just leave your funds in there to grow in investments. The government wants to be able to tax that money, so they force you to withdraw a certain percentage of the total value of your account each year, and that changes and increases as you get older and older. The tricky thing is, because of this minimum payout percentage and because many people hold investments in their RRSPs and their RRIFs, well, now that the market is volatile and potentially down, you are sort of locking in potential losses because you're forced to sell a certain amount of your RRSP and withdraw it. It's this very specific situation that both party leaders are targeting right now and putting the blame on the states for making this something that they're even talking about at all. Listen to this.
My government has already proposed an immediate response to help our seniors. We've proposed to delay by 2 years the time when seniors must withdraw their savings from their RRSP and be taxed on it. This 2-year delay will save many seniors from being forced to crystallize losses they're experiencing on the stock market today. We know that seniors should not pay the price for Donald Trump's economic vandalism over the last several days, and that is why we will allow our seniors to keep their money invested until they regain their lost amounts. We've also announced that we will allow seniors who choose to work to earn up to $34,000 tax-free. That's $10,000 more than right now.
Many Canadians are understandably worried about their jobs and their retirement savings, which is why anticipating this need, we announced this morning that we will help to protect Canadians' retirement savings from this market uncertainty. We will reduce the minimum amount that must be withdrawn from registered retirement income funds by 25% for the next year. And the benefit here is that seniors won't have to withdraw as much of their hard-earned savings when markets are volatile, as they will continue to be until this trade war is sorted out. We will also support seniors by temporarily boosting the guaranteed income supplement by 5%.
Let's talk about what those changes actually mean. First, we'll start with Polyev, who's saying, well, we're going to delay the year that you have to convert your RRSP to a RRIF by 2 years, raising this age to 73. This gives seniors 2 additional years to contribute to their RRSPs before they turn into RRIFs and they can no longer contribute and have to start selling. He also talks about the additional $10,000 tax-free that seniors can earn. This is something we covered in a previous video on the channel. I'll link to it here if you want more details. Carney instead says, you know what, we're still going to force everyone to convert at age 71, but we're going to reduce the minimum amount that you have to take out at any given age so that you don't have to sell as much. You can hold on and hopefully the stock market will rebound. He says he's going to lower it by 25%, meaning this initial one would be 3%. If we go up to age 70 here, this 5% would turn into 3.75%. So somewhat of a change. He also talks about just how bad low-income seniors have it, and he says, okay, we're going to change the guaranteed income supplement, which is a low-income tested seniors benefit, where you can get up to $1,086 per month. They're going to raise that by 5%, which ends up being an increase of just a little bit over $50 per month. So that's the brass tacks of what these changes are, but I hate to say it, if you find yourself in a situation like this where you desperately need the cash and are way down in the market, well, I think you've already made a mistake, and this is an opportunity to learn for anyone else who might be headed towards retirement to think about things in a slightly different way. We're going to get to that in just a second. These are the proposed changes, though, and there are some additional ones that are more beneficial for young people, like the Conservatives' expansion of TFSA room for Canadian investments, but there's not really any help for young Canadians who are currently exposed to the market and have short-term cash needs, as opposed to the support from both parties for retirement or close to retirement age people who also need cash. But there are some big lessons here, the main lessons being in risk tolerance, time horizon, and portfolio management. If you need your money soon and you can't afford losses, or perhaps you don't sleep well when markets dip, well, your risk tolerance is lower. And the more time and stability and experience you have, the more risk you might choose to take on if it aligns with your goals. If you're young and you're investing money that you know you won't need for 10 years plus, well, you might want to be more heavily weighted in the markets, in stocks and other investments like that. But if you are only a couple years out from retiring, or perhaps you're a year away from wanting to have a down payment for a house, well, you got to start thinking about how much exposure you want to the markets at that point. As you get closer and closer to needing that money, you need to shift more and more out of equity investments into things perhaps like GICs, short-term bonds, or even having that money sit in a cash high-interest savings account. Because it's never a good situation if the markets are down and you're being forced to sell because you need that money desperately. That's why it's really important to set up a emergency fund in the short term. So if you lose your job, you don't need to dip into your investments at potentially an inopportune time. But if you do have that long-term time horizon, in periods like this, especially if you're stressed out right now with the market turning down, I'd say turn off the investment app, stop checking your portfolio so much, and ride it out, putting the same percentage of your paycheck in that you have been all along, dollar cost averaging into a diversified set of assets, perhaps an index ETF that tracks the market. So there are some learnings, but there's also a lot of frustration that I feel like I need to express here. Because right now, markets are experiencing a short-term, possibly short-term dip, and public outrage is growing. But it's important to recognize that these losses are only locked in when you sell. and they only really affect a wealthy minority of people. Most of the investment in financial markets is concentrated amongst the highest net worth individuals and institutions. So while it is bad that the markets are down and the headlines dominating economic discourse are pretty bad right now, they don't necessarily reflect the day-to-day reality for most people. We often look at the economy and we say, well, the economy is doing well because the stock market's doing well, or the economy isn't doing well because stock prices are down. But this measuring of the economy isn't a good measure of health or quality of life for the average person. It overlooks things like wage growth, cost of living, healthcare, housing affordability, job stability. These are things that really impact average people, and they are impacted by things more than just the share prices at that current time. I 100% agree that tariffs and economic restructuring like this could cause short-term disruptions like we're seeing, including job losses in some sectors as a result of lower share prices, sure. But that doesn't mean that preserving our current system, where these markets are routinely propped up by central banks and government bailouts, well, I don't think that's the only or best option. And if you argue that market performance is the sole thing that we need to be looking at when we're talking about economic well-being, well, I think that's part of the same thinking that's led to decades of policies implemented by both parties in Canada that are skewed towards asset holders, making sure that the people who are already doing well continue to do well. So if we're serious about reforming the economy in any way that becomes more fairer and more sustainable, well, I think we have to accept that there's probably going to be some short-term pain in there. Change is rarely painless, but protecting the long-term interests of the many, I think, well, sometimes requires challenging the comfort of the few. Am I making any sense here? But with all that said, it's hard to see the outcome right now where things get that much better economically in the short term. Like maybe this makes us lean into growing domestic industry more, but it's certainly going to be painful over the next little while. But I'll take the risk of sounding like a broken record here because I've said it on the channel before. I say it all the time. It always seems to be the people who are most exposed to assets that get preferential treatment across the whole world. Like think about it this way. If the stock market is roaring, well, we don't need to change any policies. In fact, actually, maybe we'll loosen temporary worker policies so that we make sure this high demand in the market doesn't lead to increased wages for Canadian workers. Also, pay no attention to the economic stimulus that we've provided that caused prices to go up on goods and services, especially assets, which just so happens to include the real estate that average people might want to buy for their families that are now a speculative asset. But on the flip side of things, if the stock market's tanking, well, then we start to hear these ideas about changing policies so that investment holders don't need to sell at a loss and they can hold on until markets rebound. Or, and this is already in effect, this is what people do as of today, let's make it so that wealthy people never need to actually sell their investments. In fact, they can just take a loan out against these investments, a tax-free loan that they don't have to pay income tax on, and in fact, can write off their interest on that loan against their income so they can keep their income low and still qualify for seniors' benefits. Now, I might be off on some of this stuff, but time and time again, I get the sense that the gap between the wealthy and the average is getting bigger and bigger, and it seems like most policies just lock that in even more. Now, I also think there's something to be said, and I've been saying this for years, about average workers not having enough exposure or ownership in what they're doing. Like if we make the decision that, well, we're not going to do anything drastic to reorder the way the world works right now. If we say the system should stay as it is, and a system propped up by perpetual growth, well, then we've got to find a way that average people benefit from the debt and financial and growth games that are played in a world like that. I've said it could look like some sort of standardized way that people would get paid in equity and ownership mixed in with their normal paychecks. I don't know, something that ties people to their work and also exposes them to the broader economy so that when money is printed or when there are these vast stimulus programs or these policies enacted by politicians that tend to help people with assets, well, we have more of an on-ramp for people to actually get involved in that if we've decided that that is the system that is best to go with. Or maybe we're moving in an entirely different direction that I'm not seeing right now. I'm curious what you think about all of this. What have I gotten right? What have I gotten wrong? It's definitely an interesting time we're living in, one where it seems like everything is uncertain, and certainly the markets are certain that they are uncertain. How many times can I put certain in a sentence? Oh my gosh. But let me know what you think about this. What have I gotten wrong? What have I gotten right? Comment in the comment box below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And with all of that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.